Where are you from? As we get the 2-minute clock back up.
Todd Guthrie, Mount Shasta, California. Glad to be here. I believe that the words "in general" are overly broad and open the door for problems with tithe reversion, property liability issues, and rather than creating a wider window, I would suggest that the Bylaws Committee do a better job in getting us in conformity with the policies. That would seem a better move toward unity. I also think there's a difference, if I understand correctly, legally, between the words "shall" and "will," shall being a stronger imperative, which I would support. The motion also deals with purposes and policies and procedures. Speaking to purposes, purposes deal with the intent and motivation of the heart. It really requires a meeting of the mind and heart. And I see a difference here. One group would like immediate action. We're tired of waiting. The other group would like a more deliberative action and make sure we get this right. It seems clear to me that we didn't get it right initially, and that's why we've been painted into this corner over the last 2 decades. And a word regarding harmony. Harmony cannot be created unilaterally, and when it does not exist, it may require a submission to authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, there were several people lined up at this mic.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Haycock, and I am from Arizona. After hours of study, I've come to the conclusion that we cannot agree to this proposal. I question whether or not we have the ability to legally make these changes because it appears that we are in conflict with another section of our bylaws. The amendment provision referred to by Mr. Daggett in Article 14 states the following: the bylaws may be amended, revised, or repealed, provided such changes are in harmony with the spirit of the Model Union Constitution and bylaws. This clearly limits our ability to change the bylaws in this instance because the Model Constitution requires the Union to be in harmony with the working policies and procedures of the North American Division and the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. Secondly, Article 3 of our bylaws, and by the way, our Article 3 seems to be almost a word-for-word mirroring of what is in the Model Constitution. Article 3 of our bylaws states that the Pacific Union is a part of the North American Division, which is in turn a part of the General Conference. This indicates to me that the Pacific Union Conference's authority, our authority as a union, is a delegated authority given in trust from the worldwide church. In a former life, I was given the honor and privilege of representing the United States as ambassador to the Republic of Malta. My title and credentials were Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary. This meant I had unlimited power to bind our government. However, I was obligated as a matter of trust to comply with the policies, the foreign policies of our nation, even if I didn't personally agree. So I would just urge all of us to vote no on this and to go through.
Then we'll come to you next.
Doug Batchelor, Northern California. I would urge the delegates to vote against the motion to change the bylaws. I think there is a universe of difference between the words "all" and "in general." And on one hand, I hear we're being told that it really won't make a big difference. But if it won't make a difference, then why are we being asked to change it? And if it's going to make a difference, that will open the way regarding women's ordination, which much of the world church is uncomfortable. The majority of the millions of Seventh-day Adventists are uncomfortable with the positions and motions we are making today. If it's not going to make a difference, then why are we voting it? If you change the word "all" to "in general," that can make an incredible difference. If we were to say, "Hear, O Israel, love the Lord with, in general, your heart, and in general, your soul." Or at a wedding, and the minister is going through the vows, and he says, "Bill, do you take Sally, and are you willing to love and to cherish, forsaking all others?" And Bill interrupts the pastor and says, "Can we adjust that to in general, forsaking others?" They are very different words, and they will, I think, have a very different result. And what I am afraid of is that the door that we're opening now is not just going to pave the way to make a change regarding ordination. I'm afraid that it's going to affect other doctrines in the church. This is not just a policy issue, friends. This is a theology issue. There are millions of Seventh-day Adventists around the world that feel differently from the Bible, not because of some backward culture or social issue. And I hope that we'll respect them in the presentations that are made, that they are our brothers and sisters. So I would plead with you to go very slow and careful about voting against or changing the bylaws here.
My name is Ben Maxon. I'm pastor in the Paradise, California, the Paradise Seventh-day Adventist Church. I've had the privilege of serving this church for 42 years. I'm a fourth generation Adventist, third generation missionary. And during those 42 years, I've had the privilege of working as a local pastor, 10 years as a conference departmental director, and 10 years in the General Conference as stewardship director. That has given me an opportunity to observe the church around the world and see how it functions in many different ways. During that time, I have watched every single level of the organization establish policies, change bylaws, and even violate policies when the local situation demanded a different decision. Policies are, as a rule, something we come to an agreement on so that we don't have to visit the same decision over and over again. When the situation changes, the policy either must change, be violated, be rewritten, or a new policy established. In our church, we have a situation where we are confusing doctrine and practice. We have no established truth on doctrine on ordination of women. Our doctrine is clearly defined in 28 fundamentals. What we are dealing with here, both with the first and second motion, are really practice and policy. And that has led me to several questions. Do we run the danger of micromanaging the church by our emphasis on uniformity in practice and policy? Number two, could it be that focusing on policy and practice as the basis for unity will actually stand in the way of the biblical basis for unity? And could our emphasis on senior leadership and authority actually undermine the reality of God guiding His church?
We're going to go back and forth between the two mics now that the lines are sight. And your left? Yes.
Jim Lorenz, Northern California Conference. I love this church. I am a fifth-generation Seventh-day Adventist and desire to see unity in it. At the same time, I reject pseudo-unity that the Bible, the New Testament, does not recognize. I was gladdened the other night at the ASI conference when Acts 15 was referenced. I wish they had gone further and exegeted the whole passage. They left out the part that there were two paths regarding circumcision. The apostles did not wring their hands over unity when they said some may circumcise, some may not. At the same time, we are not going where the General Conference has not already been. Way back in 1881, the General Conference resolved this. Resolved that females possessing the necessary qualifications to fill that position may with perfect propriety be set apart by ordination to the work of the Christian ministry. It should be noted that that resolution did die, but possibly because it was 40 years before women had the right to vote, they bowed to culture and not to Christ. Lastly, when the General Conference was not adequately supporting the work in the South, Ellen White took the extraordinary step of breaking policy with the General Conference and diverting some of her tithe and that of some others to that work. That tells us two things. First, Ellen White did not see all General Conference policy as perfect. Secondly, still very loyal to the church, Ellen White felt at liberty to do so. We, still very loyal to the church, vote to change this policy.
For the chairman, my name is Lionel Booth. I represent the Fontana Spanish Church in Fontana. And my comment today is that we are not here really to affirm the ordination of women. I think it's been pretty well put. I don't really think anyone in this room is totally against the ordination of women. Even though a lot of time was spent telling us why we should ordain women, you are preaching to the choir. We already believe that. The policy that we have to decide today is something that will affect the entire church, not just the ordination of women. I think the Lord determined that this affair when he set L.G. White as prophet of this organization when it started. So this is not something that we are here to discuss or to argue about. But the idea of taking a decision contrary to what Pastor Wilson said today is what we are voting about. So your decision today is not really about the ordination of women. It is whether we will remain within the church and set the example of submitting ourselves to the leadership, or whether we are going to determine that our cause is so great that it is good enough to fracture the decision made. And if you've heard the officers of the General Conference, they have voted against. They've asked us to vote against this because they are trying to deal with this divisive issue. And if we vote to affirm this today, it will have earth-shaking consequences in our church. So please, think hardly and pray hardly that the Lord will lead your vote in the right direction.
Ramiro Cano, Central California Conference. Mr. Chairman, thank you. The issue for me is not women ordination today. It is more about process. There's one thing that unites us all. We love and support our church. I would urge this body today to acquiesce to the GC appeal letter and give the current GC study process an opportunity to go through its final determination. What concerns me today is the action to change our bylaws, possibly opening the gate for what could come next. We have a system, a process to address church doctrine, church policy, and procedures. Will we begin to readjust the ecclesiastical processes of our church with a cafeteria-style approach? Apply the one you like and pass over the ones you don't like? Let's not throw our bylaws under the bus in order to gain a desired outcome. Much has been said that the union has the delegated authority to take action. Others argue that point. We have heard them today. However, assuming that we do have the power and authority, should we not do as Jesus did at the cross? Ellen White says, the cross, this is to be the foundation of every discourse given. And as I am giving a discourse, I would like to go to the cross. When Jesus hung on the cross, he had all the authority and power at his disposal. He could have come down from the cross, and yet he chose not to exercise that power. He exercised great restraint. It was his restraint which spoke of his love. It was his restraint which spoke of his humility. It was his restraint which spoke of his grace towards man. And it was his restraint which spoke of his unity with the process of the Godhead to save man. Should we not exercise restraint and acquiesce to the world church appeal? Would it not speak of our love, our humility, our grace, and unity towards this world church that we love? I say to the GC, if today's votes are defeated, I would not interpret that as a win. I would interpret that as this union embracing the appeal letter and allowing the study to go through its final determination. My appeal to the GC...
Elder, we're listening for your translation section now.
Lo que me preocupa hoy es el voto para cambiar nuestra Constitución y de esa manera abrir las puertas para cualquier agenda o proceder personal. En nuestra iglesia tenemos un sistema de organización para tratar con asuntos de doctrina y póliza. Estamos listos para ajustar el proceso eclesiástico de nuestra iglesia con un estilo de cafetería, o sea, escoger lo que nos gusta y pasar por alto lo que no nos gusta. Con gran ahínco apelo de esta delegación hoy, que votemos no a las dos acciones de este día y de esa manera darle la oportunidad a la Iglesia Mundial que concluya el estudio de las 13 divisiones y esperar el reporte de esa conclusión en la sesión general del año 2015. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Have the results instantaneously, 77% to 23%. So that moves that we end debate and we go to the motion on the floor for an immediate vote, and that vote is the recommendation to adjust the bylaws. All right, all in favor, please vote yes. All opposed, vote no. 2/3 majority is required for this bylaws change also. Well, that failed. We need a 66% vote, and we got 65, or the delegates more appropriately registered 65 to 35%. So that motion has failed.
We have so many papers move around here, it's going to take me a second to get back there because I want to do it right.
It's on the screen.
Oh, well, that makes it easy.
Read it anyway.
That the Pacific Union Conference approve ordinations to the gospel ministry without regard to gender.
Now, before we leave, I wish that maybe we had not applauded that way, because I don't think that there's necessarily, quote, a win, but we've expressed our opinion through our vote. The most important thing that we've got to determine is how to stay together and to move forward. Since I did not know how the outcome would be, not having a prophetic gift, I didn't prepare a closing speech. However, I would say, since I have no carefully prepared notes, that we have registered our conscience through our vote. We've had discussion, debate, and now let's go do the work of God. Let's stand for our benediction. Don't remember to turn in your voting cards as you leave.